Episode 1, The Arrival. I remember the first time I saw it. That light. Pure, unwavering, and wrong. The monastery of San Vettor stood like a wound in the mountains, carved into the stone, its bell tower leaning slightly as if ashamed of what it witnessed through the centuries. I was sent there by the archdiocese to document the so-called miracle of the eternal flame, a candle said to have burned for over 300 years without melting a single inch. They called it Lumen Aeternum, the light of God. But I could tell from the first moment that it wasn't divine. The air changed when I stepped inside the chapel. It smelled not of incense or wax, but of iron and dust, like the scent of blood long dried. The monks greeted me without words, their faces pale beneath their hoods. Their eyes followed me, then turned away as if afraid of what they might reveal. At the center of the chapel stood the candle. Tall. White. Untouched. Its flame burned steady, without smoke, without tremor, as though the air itself bowed before it. Yet the shadows it cast did not behave like normal shadows, they bent toward the flame, as if drawn to it, hungry. Brother Paolo, the oldest monk, motioned for me to approach. His fingers trembled as he handed me a small wooden rosary. "To protect you," he whispered. It was the first voice I heard within those walls. I knelt before the candle. For a moment, I felt peace, deep, cold peace, like the stillness of a tomb. But then the flame flickered, just once. And I swear I saw a face inside it. A human face. Screaming silently. I pulled back, heart pounding. Brother Paolo's eyes widened. "You saw, didn't you?" he rasped. "They always see you first." That night, I couldn't sleep. My room was small, the walls lined with old crucifixes whose wooden Christ figures looked more tortured than holy. Outside, I heard the wind. And beneath it, whispering. Soft, almost like prayer, but too low, too many voices. I opened the door. The corridor was empty, lit by torches that burned weaker than the candle's light. As I approached the chapel again, the whispering grew louder, not from the monks, but from the flame itself. It spoke. Not in words I understood, but in something older, a sound that made my bones ache, like the echo of weeping through water. I felt my rosary grow hot in my hand. The door behind me creaked open. Brother Paolo stood there, pale as ash. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "It feeds on curiosity." "What is it?" I asked. He hesitated, glancing at the flame. "It's not a miracle," he murmured. "It's a prison." And for the first time, I noticed something I had missed before. The candle was not sitting on a pedestal. It was sealed within a circle of melted wax that had hardened like glass, etched with names. Hundreds of names. Some of them were scratched out. One of them was still fresh. Mine. Episode 2, The Rule of Silence. They told me the vow of silence was sacred. But I learned soon enough it was survival. The morning after the whispers, the monastery bells rang once and then stopped, their echo dying unnaturally fast, swallowed by the mountains. The monks gathered for morning prayer in a slow, mournful procession. None of them spoke. Not one. Only the sound of their sandals scraping stone and the soft wheeze of old lungs filled the chapel. I tried to ask Brother Paolo what the ritual meant, but he pressed a finger to his lips. Silencio. He gestured toward the candle. Its flame was steady again, glowing with that unnatural purity, yet the air around it shimmered faintly like heat rising from sand. I thought it was my imagination until I saw the shimmer ripple toward a monk who knelt too close. He flinched. Then he smiled. A wrong kind of smile, too wide, too calm. He leaned in, whispering something to the flame, and I swear the fire bent toward him, as if listening. Brother Paulo grabbed my arm and pulled me away. His grip was strong despite his age. When the prayer ended, the monks left in silence, their faces blank, their eyes avoiding the candle. But the one who had whispered remained kneeling. Hours passed. He never moved. That evening, when the bell rang again, the air filled with the stench of something foul. I followed the sound to the chapel. The monk was still there, his head bowed, his mouth open, blood running down his chin. His tongue was gone. A small pile of ash lay before him. The candle burned brighter than ever. Brother Paulo stood behind me, his face hollow. He spoke when he shouldn't have, he said quietly. The candle doesn't like to be spoken to. It listens. It answers. I stared at him, horrified. What do you mean, it answers? He looked away. Not with words. With hunger. That night, I dreamt of the monk's face, his mouth opening wider and wider, until it wasn't a mouth at all but a hole of fire. Inside it, I saw the candle again, except this time it had melted halfway down, dripping not wax but flesh. My flesh. When I woke, my throat was raw, as if I'd been screaming. I reached for my rosary, but the beads were cold, so cold they left frost on my fingertips. Someone knocked at my door. A soft, deliberate rhythm. 3 knocks. Then silence. I opened it to find a note on the floor. No one in sight. The parchment was old, edges burnt, the ink written in shaking Latin. Omnis vox incenditur. Every voice burns. I wanted to leave. Every instinct told me to flee. But something, some twisted sense of duty, or maybe the pull of the candle itself, kept me there. When I passed the chapel again before dawn, the door was ajar. Inside, the flame flickered like a heartbeat. And though no one was there, I heard it again, soft and low, beneath the sound of my breathing. Matteo. It said my name. Episode 3, The Waxless Flame. By the 3rd day, I had stopped pretending that the candle was holy. Nothing divine could make the air feel that heavy, that alive. Brother Paulo had grown pale and silent again. The monks went about their routines, praying, cleaning, eating in utter quiet, but I could see the fear behind their stillness. Every glance toward the chapel carried a hidden tremor, a prayer they dared not voice. That afternoon, I went to the monastery's library. The air smelled of dust, candle smoke, and something else, sulfur, faint but unmistakable. The room was enormous, its shelves lined with books in Latin, Greek, and older tongues I couldn't recognize. I found the archives. Records dating back centuries. Pilgrims, priests, scientists, all who had come to see the eternal flame. Most left glowing testimonies of faith. But one folder was missing from the index. The label beneath read, Experimentum 1892, Father Bellini. It wasn't in its place, but I found it hidden behind a row of hymnals, wrapped in black cloth. Inside were brittle pages filled with Latin equations, anatomical sketches, and detailed notes about combustion without consumption. Father Bellini hadn't been a priest. He had been a chemist. The notes spoke of a substance not of this world, discovered during an excavation beneath the monastery, a black oil that burned endlessly when mixed with blessed wax. Bellini had called it divine residue. The church had called it heresy. One line was underlined twice. The flame requires a vessel. A willing vessel. Wax is only the first. My heart thudded. I turned the page and a photograph slipped out. It showed the candle, still tall and perfect, but the room around it was filled with corpses, their faces blackened by soot. A man knelt among them, smiling faintly. His eyes were gone. Written beneath in fading ink. He saw the truth. I nearly dropped the photo when a voice came from behind me. "You found his work," said Brother Paolo softly. He looked older now, as if the candle had been feeding on him too. "Who was Bellini?" I asked. "Not who," Paolo said. "What he became. The flame doesn't consume wax. It consumes the faithful. Their faith, their sins, their memories. That's why it never dies, because it always finds something new to burn." I stared at him, horror twisting in my chest. "Then why keep it here?" He gave a bitter smile. "Because the church believes it's proof of God." But it isn't. It's proof of something older, something that refused to die when heaven cast it down. A low hum filled the air. The candle, though we were in another room, pulsed faintly through the walls, like a heartbeat echoing inside the stone. Then Paolo's face changed. His eyes went wide, his lips trembling. "Do you hear it?" he whispered. "It's calling again." And before I could stop him, he turned and ran toward the chapel. When I followed moments later, the door was open, light spilling out like molten gold. Paolo stood before the candle, whispering feverishly. The flame flared white, so bright it erased every shadow, and then went still. Paolo was gone. All that remained was the rosary I had given him, melted into the stone. And the candle had grown taller. Episode 4, The Hidden Confessional. The morning after Brother Paolo vanished, the monastery rang with false calm. No one spoke his name. No one asked where he'd gone. They simply prayed louder. I tried to convince myself he had left, fled into the mountains. But deep down, I knew better. I had seen that light swallow him whole. The candle still burned, perfect as ever. I began to notice how the air around it seemed to hum softly, as if the stones of the chapel themselves were alive. The flame cast no warmth, yet the closer I stood, the faster my heart raced. I decided to search the monastery for answers. The abbey was a labyrinth of forgotten corridors and sealed rooms, some older than the church itself. Dust floated like pale ghosts in the shafts of morning light. Behind the main altar, I noticed something strange, a thin outline carved into the wall, almost invisible beneath layers of plaster. The edges were uneven, as though someone had tried to hide it in haste. I pressed my palm to the cold stone. It felt hollow. A door. I fetched an old chisel from the tool room and pried at the crack until the wall gave way with a groan. A rush of stale air hit me, heavy, moist, and filled with the scent of old incense and rot. My candlelight trembled as I stepped inside. It was a confessional. A small, narrow space with a wooden bench and a partition of iron lattice. But this one was unlike any I had seen before. The wood was scorched, blackened as if by fire, except for one spot, a mirror, set into the wall behind where the priest would have sat. Its surface was dark, almost liquid, reflecting nothing but the faint flame of my candle. When I leaned closer, my reflection rippled and changed. For a moment, I saw Paolo staring back. His lips moved soundlessly, his eyes pleading. I stumbled back in horror, hitting the bench behind me. The sound echoed like thunder. My candle flickered and died. Total darkness. Then, faintly, a voice whispered from beyond the lattice, a calm, measured, priestly. "Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned." I froze. The voice wasn't mine. It came again, louder this time, trembling with something like terror. "Forgive me, Father, for he listens too." Something shifted on the other side of the confessional. A breath. A weight. The smell of burnt wax filled the air. I forced myself to relight my candle. The small flame wavered, and in the mirror, the face returned. Not Paolo. Someone else. A man in priestly robes, his skin charred black, his eyes two hollow sockets. His mouth stretched open, wide enough for firelight to pour out. I backed away, heart hammering, but my candle flared brighter, too bright, until the mirror's surface cracked, splintering like glass under pressure. Behind it, I saw movement. A second flame. Smaller, redder, alive. A candle burning within the wall itself. And just before the mirror shattered completely, I heard the whisper again, closer now, almost inside my ear. It feeds through faith. It sees through glass. The mirror exploded, throwing shards across the room. My candle went out again. When I stumbled back into the chapel, gasping, the eternal flame flickered for the first time since I'd arrived. And in its glow, carved freshly into the altar's wood, were the same words I had just heard in that hidden chamber. It sees through glass. Episode 5, The Abbot's Secret. The monastery had grown quieter since the night of the confessional. Too quiet. Even the bells seemed afraid to ring. Brother Paolo's absence was now treated as divine mystery, taken by the light, the monks whispered with reverence and fear. I saw it differently. Taken, yes, but not by anything holy. I decided it was time to speak to the abbot. Father Giulio lived in the upper cloister, in a room that smelled of smoke and myrrh. His door was locked when I arrived, but I could hear movement inside, the rustle of cloth, the low murmur of prayer, or something pretending to be prayer. When he finally opened the door, I was struck by his appearance. He was barefoot, his robes stained with candle soot, and his forearms wrapped in fresh bandages that bled through the linen. His eyes were red-rimmed, unfocused, as if he hadn't slept in days. "Brother Matteo," he said hoarsely, "you have been walking where you should not." "I found the hidden confessional," I said. "And I saw what's inside. You're hiding something beneath this monastery." He looked past me toward the chapel, as if he feared the candle could hear us. "Do you know what happens when a man confesses before the eternal flame?" he asked. I shook my head. "He is forgiven," the abbot whispered, "but not by God." He turned, motioning me inside. The room was filled with melted candles, dozens, hundreds, all burnt down to their bases, their wax fused into grotesque shapes. On his desk lay a parchment covered in Latin scripture, though the words twisted unnaturally, letters curling like smoke. He poured wine into 2 cups, though his hands trembled so badly he spilled half of it. "You think the candle is a miracle," he said, "but it is a wound, a doorway that never closed." He unwrapped the bandages from his arms. I recoiled. Beneath the linen, his skin was burned, but not charred. It glowed. Tiny veins of light ran through his flesh, pulsing faintly like living embers. "I tried to destroy it once," he said softly. "Years ago. I doused it in holy water. The flame turned blue, then it spoke. Not with sound, with pain. My body caught fire from the inside. I've been its keeper ever since." "Keeper?" I asked. "You mean servant." He smiled weakly. "We all serve something, brother. Some serve faith. Others serve what faith cannot touch." He led me to the chapel. The monks were gone. Only the candle remained, burning steady and silent. Its light shimmered on the abbot's skin, and for a moment, I thought I saw the flame move as if reaching toward him. He knelt. "It needs to be fed," he said. "Every generation. Every abbot must offer it a life, a soul devout enough to burn clean." "Paolo," I whispered. The abbot nodded slowly. He offered himself. He wanted release. My stomach turned. And when there are no volunteers?
The abbot looked up at me then, his eyes hollow yet glinting with that same unnatural glow as his burns.
Then the flame chooses.
The candle flickered violently, and for an instant, I saw something coiled within it, a shape of wings and teeth made of pure light. The abbot's face twisted in agony. "It's hungry again," he gasped. "It has waited long enough." And as the flames surged upward, stretching toward the vaulted ceiling, every other candle in the monastery lit itself at once, hundreds of tiny fires bowing before a single, eternal blaze. I stumbled back, choking on the heat, on the smoke that wasn't smoke but breath. When the light finally dimmed, the abbot was gone. Only his rosary remained, glowing faintly where his body had knelt.
And the eternal candle
had burned lower for the first time. Episode 6, The Pilgrim's Child. The day the woman arrived, the mountain air felt heavier than usual. Storm clouds gathered, but no rain came. The monastery's bell, silent since the abbot's death, rang once on its own. She came barefoot, her dress torn from travel, carrying a child in her arms. The girl couldn't have been more than 7, her skin pale, her lips blue as if death had already begun to claim her. The monks hesitated at the gates, whispering prayers, but she forced her way inside. "I heard the stories," she said through tears.
"The candle heals. Please, save her." They led her into the chapel. I followed, unable to look away. The eternal flame burned with its usual cruel calm, its light pressing against the shadows like a living thing. The woman knelt before it, clutching her daughter to her chest. "Please," she whispered, "if this is your light, take me instead." The monks looked at me for permission, as though I held authority I did not want. The abbot was gone. Paulo was gone. And the candle, somehow, seemed to fill the silence where their faith once lived. I wanted to tell her to leave, to run. But I didn't. I needed to know what the flame would do. She placed the child before the altar. The girl's breathing was shallow, her small chest rising and falling like the wings of a dying bird. The woman touched the base of the candle and prayed in a voice trembling with desperation. At first, nothing happened. Then the flame flared red. The air trembled. The wax, what little there was, shivered like liquid glass. The candle's light spread across the floor, crawling toward the girl. And then, impossibly, she breathed. A ragged, choking gasp, but alive. Color returned to her face. The woman screamed in joy, collapsing against her daughter's small body. The monks fell to their knees, murmuring thanks to a god who had long abandoned that place. But as the candle's light steadied again, I saw something that froze me to my core. The little girl opened her eyes. They were not blue anymore. They glowed faintly, the same golden hue as the eternal flame. She looked at her mother, but there was no warmth in her gaze. Her expression was distant, hollow, as if something else now looked out from behind those eyes. The woman began to weep again, this time, in fear. She reached for her child, but the girl recoiled, whispering in a voice too calm, too ancient for her years. "It's so dark where he is." The monks gasped. The child stood slowly, her gaze fixed on the candle. And then she smiled, softly, eerily. "I can hear him calling," she said. "He's not done burning." Before anyone could react, every candle in the chapel flared to life. The wind howled through the stained glass windows, bending the light into shapes that moved like hands. The eternal flame rose higher, roaring soundlessly. When it finally dimmed, the woman was gone. Only her rosary remained, melted into the floor beside the child, who sat silently before the altar, her eyes still glowing faintly in the dark. From that day, the monks began calling her La Nina della Lama, the girl of the flame.
And every night after, when the monastery fell silent, I heard her singing softly to herself in the chapel, in a voice that didn't belong to her. Episode 7, The Night of Unlit Flames. For 3 centuries, the candle of San Vettor had never gone out.
Until that night.
It began with silence so deep it felt unnatural. No wind through the cloisters, no creak of timber, not even the usual whispers that haunted the chapel after dusk. The monks gathered for evening prayer, their faces drawn and hollow, each one too afraid to look directly at the flame.
The girl, La Nina della Lama, sat cross-legged before the altar, watching the eternal candle with unblinking eyes.
The light shimmered across her pupils, turning them gold. I noticed she hadn't eaten in days.
She didn't need to.
The flame fed her somehow. Then, without warning, the candle flickered. A tremor ran through the floor.
Every torch in the chapel sputtered out at once, leaving us blind.
Gasps, muffled prayers, the sound of knees striking stone. The girl tilted her head, as if listening to something beyond the dark.
And then, the flame died. Not faded, died. The darkness that followed wasn't ordinary. It was thick, suffocating, like something alive had wrapped itself around the room. I could hear breathing that wasn't ours. Slow. Wet. Hungry.
One of the brothers struck a match, his hands shaking. The tiny spark illuminated faces around me, pale, wide-eyed, and behind them, others.
Shapes. Dozens of them. Bent, silent silhouettes kneeling in rows that hadn't been there moments before. Who are they? I whispered.
The girl's voice came softly in the dark.
They used to be you. The match died.
What followed was chaos amongst screaming, chanting fragments of Latin as something cold brushed past our robes.
Fingers that weren't flesh. Shadows that remembered being men.
The dead had come back, drawn by the absence of light, by the promise of warmth that no longer burned. I stumbled toward the altar, desperate to relight the candle.
My hands trembled as I struck flint again and again, but the wick remained black, refusing fire.
Behind me, the whispers grew louder, turning into a droning chorus of confession.
Forgive me, forgive me, forgive me. And above them all, the girl's calm voice. He's free now.
Suddenly, the candle flared back to life, an explosion of blinding blue light that filled the chapel. I fell to my knees, covering my face. When I dared to look again, the shadows were gone. Every monk lay dead, their bodies twisted, mouths open in silent screams. Only the girl remained, standing before the flame, untouched.
But something was different.
The candle burned darker now, its center no longer pure white, but streaked with black veins that pulsed like blood. She turned to me, her voice barely a whisper.
He needed to breathe, she said. And now he's awake.
Outside, thunder rolled over the mountains, though no storm followed. The bell of San Vettor began to toll again, slow, uneven, and hollow, ringing for those who could no longer pray. And as I stared at the candle's new, corrupted light, I realized the truth.
The miracle was never that it didn't go out.
The miracle was that it ever stayed lit at all.
Episode 8, The Gospel of Ash.
After the night of unlit flames, the monastery was no longer a house of God. It was a tomb that breathed. The air reeked of burned incense and death. The monks' bodies were left where they fell, no one dared to touch them. Their faces were twisted toward the candle, their eyes reflecting its blackened light. Even in death, they looked awake.
The girl, La Nina della Lama, vanished before dawn.
Her small bed was empty, her blanket folded neatly as if she'd simply gone for a walk.
But the chapel doors were sealed from within.
And still, the candle burned. I tried to pray that morning, but every word turned to ash in my mouth.
Faith had become a foreign language to me.
Yet, I needed answers, something beyond fear, beyond superstition.
I needed truth.
That's when I returned to the library. The old shelves whispered when I passed, parchment rustling as if stirred by invisible hands. I searched through the forbidden section, the one sealed under iron lock. The key I found hanging from the abbot's chamber door. Its metal was warm, too warm. Inside the vault lay ancient scrolls, relics, and a single black book bound in cracked leather. Its cover bore a symbol I recognized, the circle of wax that surrounded the eternal candle. The title, scorched into the leather, read, Evangelium de Cera, the Gospel of Wax. I turned the pages carefully. The ink shimmered faintly in the candlelight, letters twisting like living things.
It wasn't written in any language I knew, but somehow I understood it.
It told of a seraph, a divine being who defied the will of heaven, refusing to bow to mortal prayer. Cast down, it fell to earth in the form of light, pure and endless.
A flame that would never die.
The church, unable to destroy it, sealed it within sacred wax, forcing the angel to burn forever as penance. They called it Lux Damnatus,
the damned light.
Each monastery that guarded the flame was sworn to keep it alive, to ensure its suffering continued, that its repentance never ended. The miracle was a prison. But one passage made my blood run cold. If the light should falter, the penitent shall breathe again. And with his breath, the world shall remember his name. I turned another page and froze. There, drawn in red ink, was an image of the candle. Around it were 12 faces, melting into one another.
I recognized them. The abbot. Brother Paolo. The monks.
And beneath them, a new face was being drawn, not inked, but forming slowly as if the page itself was alive.
Mine.
A sound echoed from the hallway, a child's giggle, faint and melodic. I turned sharply, the book nearly slipping from my hands.
The girl stood in the doorway.
Her golden eyes glowed softly in the dim light. She was holding something, a candle of her own, smaller, darker, burning with the same corrupted flame.
He wants you to finish it, she said sweetly. You're the last verse. I backed away, clutching the book. What are you? She smiled. The light that remembers.
The candles around us flared one by one, like stars igniting in reverse. The room filled with a hum, a low, thrumming sound that felt more alive than silence. When I looked down again, the gospel had closed itself. The cover was hot beneath my fingers. The title had changed.
Now it read only one word. Matteo.
And from the chapel behind us came the slow, steady toll of the bell, each strike echoing like a heartbeat in the dark.
The angel was waking. Episode 9, The Candlekeeper's Death. I woke to the sound of chanting. Not human chanting. It came from beneath the chapel floor, low, guttural, endless. The rhythm of it made my bones vibrate. When I stepped into the corridor, I found the monks gone. Only footprints of ash marked where they had once walked. The candle still burned, taller than ever. Its flame was no longer white or gold, but a deep, living crimson. Every few seconds, it pulsed like a heart. Father Lorenzo, the last of the old monks, stood beside it. He was the candlekeeper now, appointed after Father Giulio's death. His robes were soaked in oil, his hands blistered from the heat. He turned to me as I entered, and I saw madness, or perhaps devotion, shining in his eyes. "It's almost time," he said. His voice cracked like dry wood. "Time for what?" I asked. "For the light to remember its shape." I wanted to back away,
but the air around the candle held me still. The walls seemed to breathe. The painted saints on the frescoes above the altar had begun to cry, thin streaks of wax running from their eyes. Lorenzo lifted a silver chalice filled with melted wax. "The flame must be fed," he whispered, and began pouring it over his own hands. The wax hissed as it touched his skin, but he didn't flinch. "Only those who believe may keep it alive." "Stop!" I shouted. He smiled at me, his teeth stained black. "I've been keeping it alive for 40 years, Brother Matteo. 40 years of feeding, praying, bleeding. But it's not enough anymore. It wants more than faith." He stepped closer to the flame. His body trembled. The light reached for him, wrapping around him like a lover's embrace. And then he screamed. It wasn't a human sound, it was a chorus. Dozens of voices, maybe hundreds, rising and falling through him. His body convulsed, flesh melting, bones cracking as the fire consumed him from the inside out. The smell was unbearable. When it was over, he was still standing burned black, hollow-eyed, motionless. But he wasn't dead. His chest rose and fell, slow and mechanical. His lips moved, though no sound came out. I approached in horror. His skin glowed faintly beneath the charred surface, light bleeding through like cracks in glass. "Father Lorenzo," I whispered. "Can you hear me?" His head turned toward me with a creak. "He's coming," he said. "And you will open the door." Then the flame inside him went out. He collapsed into ash. For a moment, the chapel was silent. Then every candle in the monastery flickered to life except the eternal one. Its flame had turned black. I heard a soft laugh behind me. The girl was there again, her small hands clasped before her chest. The black flame's reflection danced in her golden eyes. "You see," she said. "He's learning to walk again." I looked down at Lorenzo's ashes and realized they weren't ashes at all. They were forming something. Lines. Shapes. Letters. When the dust settled, one sentence remained written across the floor. "The keeper falls, the door opens." The walls began to shake. Somewhere deep beneath the chapel, something ancient and vast exhaled for the first time in centuries. And the candle, its black flame split in two, like eyes opening. Episode 10, The Light That Judges. By the 10th night, the monastery no longer felt like a place built by human hands. The walls had begun to hum. The stones themselves seemed to breathe. And the eternal candle, no longer golden, no longer white, burned with a black light that revealed everything you didn't want to see. There were only 3 of us left, Brother Tomas, the mute novice, Sister Alina, the caretaker sent by the diocese, and me. And every time the candle pulsed, one of us remembered something we wished had stayed buried. It started with Tomas. He was kneeling in prayer when the black light flared. His shadow twisted across the wall, stretching into something that wasn't his shape, something taller, something with wings. Then he began to speak. Not aloud, but in gasps, as if the air around him was squeezing his lungs. "I buried him, under the olive tree," he croaked. "The child I killed. The one no one found." Alina screamed. I froze. Tomas clutched his throat, his veins glowing red beneath the skin. The light from the candle crawled up his face, searing him from the inside out. His eyes burst into flame. He didn't fall. He just stopped existing. When the fire died, all that remained of him was a pile of salt and a faint scent of roses. Alina turned to me, trembling. "It judges sin," she whispered. "It's not light, it's the eye of God." But I knew better. No god would need to burn someone to see the truth. I tried to avert my gaze from the candle, but the light pulled me back. Every reflection in the chapel, the gilded icons, the glass of the lanterns, even the wet marble floor, held faces. The faces of those it had consumed. I wanted to run, to flee into the mountains and never return, but the doors were sealed shut by wax that had seeped from the cracks in the wood, sealing every exit. That was when Alina stepped forward. "I won't hide," she said, her voice steady, eyes glistening with tears.
"If it's God, let him see me."
The candle flared brighter than I'd ever seen, flooding the chapel with a red-gold light that bled like sunrise. The air filled with a low hum, the same sound I'd heard beneath the floor, the sound of something vast, ancient, awakening.
Alina dropped to her knees, sobbing.
"I took their faith," she cried. "The children I made pray to silence. I told them God was listening, but he never was." The light bent toward her, curling around her like smoke. For a moment, she looked peaceful. Then her body folded in on itself, collapsing like paper burning without flame. When it was over, nothing remained, not even ash. Only the candle's light, steady and unshaken.
I was alone.
The hum grew louder, filling every corner of the monastery. I felt it in my chest, in my blood. My own reflection stared back at me from the candle's base, but it wasn't mine. Its eyes were bright, golden, unblinking. And then the voice came, not from the flame, but from within me. "You carry sin enough for 1,000 souls, Matteo.
Shall I burn it clean?"
I fell to my knees, trembling. "Who are you?" The candle flickered, and for an instant, the flame formed into the shape of wings.
"Not who," it whispered.
"What you prayed for." The light brightened again, and suddenly, I saw every sin I'd ever hidden, the faces of the people I'd betrayed, the lies I'd told, the faith I'd abandoned. My heart pounded against my ribs like a drum of war. But then, as I stared into the flame, I realized something terrible. The candle wasn't revealing sin to punish it.
It was feeding on it.
The stronger the guilt, the brighter it burned. And for the first time, I understood why it had never melted.
It didn't need wax. It had us. Episode 11, The Chamber Below.
By dawn, I could no longer tell if the candle's glow came from the flame itself or from inside my eyes. Everything shimmered with that same feverish hue, black and gold, like light seen through blood.
I needed to know where it came from. If there was a way to end it, it would be beneath.
The old manuscripts had hinted at something, the vessel below the altar, but no one in the monastery ever spoke of it. Still, as I stared at the chapel floor, I noticed faint seams between the stones, arranged in the shape of a cross.
I pried one loose.
Beneath it was a ring of iron, eaten by rust. When I pulled, the slab shifted, releasing a gust of air so ancient it smelled like time itself, mold, wax, and rot. A staircase descended into the dark. I took a torch and went down. The steps were slick, carved from stone that wept moisture.
The deeper I went, the louder the hum became, a low, rhythmic pulse, like a heart beating under the earth.
My torchlight flickered against walls lined not with brick or mortar, but with wax.
It glistened. Poured into patterns.
Human shapes half-formed, faces screaming silently from the frozen flow. When I reached the bottom, the tunnel opened into a vast chamber. Candles, hundreds, maybe thousands, stood in rows that stretched into the dark. Some were tall and new, others melted down to stubs. Yet every one of them was made from the same pale material.
I touched one and froze.
It was warm.
Soft. Not wax. Flesh.
Each candle had something trapped inside, the faint impression of a face, the curl of fingers beneath translucent skin. In the center of the chamber stood an altar, slick with black wax. Upon it burned a single, towering candle, the twin of the one above, its flame pulsing in perfect rhythm with the one in the chapel. Between the two, invisible threads of light flickered like veins connecting a heart to its limbs.
And carved into the altar was a single line in Latin. Ex carne, lux.
From flesh, comes light. I staggered back, bile rising in my throat. The gospel of wax had spoken the truth, the flame requires a vessel. The monks had not been its keepers.
They were its harvest.
I turned to flee, but a voice stopped me.
Leave it, it said softly.
The girl stood at the edge of the chamber, barefoot, her small hands clasped behind her back. The light from the candles rippled over her face, making her look carved from living wax. You shouldn't see this, she said gently.
It makes him hungry.
I could barely speak.
What is he? She smiled.
Light that refused to die. The hum grew louder, deeper. The candle on the altar flared, and the wax around it began to move, melting, flowing upward, shaping itself into forms. The faces in the walls opened their mouths, whispering prayers in a dozen dead languages. I stumbled backward, tripping over a cracked candle.
It broke open. Inside was a human heart, still beating faintly.
The girl tilted her head.
You see, Matteo?
You don't feed the flame with faith. You feed it with life. Every confession, every prayer, every sin, it all drips down here. The heart gave one last twitch and stopped. Soon, she whispered, he'll need a new candle.
I ran. The stairs seemed endless.
Behind me, the chamber glowed brighter and brighter, the hum rising to a roar. When I burst back into the chapel, the eternal candle blazed higher than ever, its black fire reaching the ceiling. The wax under my boots was hot, pulsing like blood. I realized then I hadn't escaped the chamber. The whole monastery was the chamber.
And the candle wasn't just alive. It was growing. Episode 12, The Visitor.
It was midday when the visitor arrived, though the sky above San Vittore looked nothing like day. The sun hung dim and red, as if the light itself had been scorched. He came on horseback, a man in a long black cassock, his collar gleaming white against the gloom. He carried a silver cross and a small leather satchel marked with the Vatican seal.
Father Angelo Rossi, Inquisitor and Exorcist. I met him at the gate.
His horse refused to enter. The reports from this monastery, he began, his voice calm but cold. They speak of heresy, demonic phenomena, and the disappearance of an entire order.
His eyes fixed on me. Are you Brother Matteo? I nodded. My voice came out hoarse.
If you've come to save this place, Father, you're too late.
He frowned.
No place is beyond redemption.
I said nothing.
He would learn soon enough. Inside the chapel, the candle burned higher than ever, its black flame twisting upward like smoke underwater.
Father Angelo crossed himself, his jaw tightening. That thing should not exist. It's been here for 3 centuries, I said quietly. We tried to destroy it. It doesn't burn wax, Father. It burns us.
He opened his satchel and drew out a vial of holy water and a crucifix etched with Latin script. No flame stands against the authority of heaven. But when he stepped forward, the flame bent toward him as if recognizing him. For a moment, the air filled with a low hum, the same pulsing sound I'd heard in the chamber below. The light reflected in the crucifix, and then inside it. I saw something move behind the silver surface, like wings thrashing in glass.
Father Angelo hesitated. What?
The flame flared white. A rush of heat knocked him backward. His cross clattered to the floor, glowing red-hot.
He gasped, clutching his hand.
The burn on his palm formed a perfect circle. "The mark of the bound," I whispered.
His eyes widened. "You've seen this before." "Yes," I said. "On the abbot. On Paolo. On every man who served this place." He stared at the candle, trembling. "Then it's not of hell." "No," I said softly. "It's something older." At dusk, he began the ritual anyway. Latin filled the chapel, words of command, of faith, of desperate defiance. The air grew thick, vibrating with unseen power. Candles exploded one by one, showering molten wax like rain. The eternal flame roared, and a voice spoke, not aloud, but inside us both. "You speak his words," it said, "but you forget his silence." Father Angelo screamed, the Latin faltering on his tongue. His rosary snapped, the beads scattering across the floor like black pearls. The flame surged taller, splitting into two tendrils that wrapped around him like serpents. He shouted the final line of the exorcism, and the light went out. Total darkness. The silence was unbearable. My heart pounded so loud I could hear it echo. Then, slowly, the flame returned, a faint ember at first, then growing brighter. Father Angelo was still standing, but his eyes were gone. His body trembled. From his mouth came whispers in a language I had never heard, old as the stars. He turned toward me, his empty sockets bleeding light. "It cannot be cast out," he said. "He is not trapped here. We are trapped in him." Then he knelt before the candle, his face serene. "Forgive me, light eternal," he whispered, "for I have tried to make you small." The flame rose, engulfing him. No scream. No sound. Only the smell of burned salt and sanctity. When it dimmed again, nothing remained of Father Angelo but his crucifix, bent, blackened, and still faintly glowing. That night, I wrote the final words of his report in his own book. "The light endures. The Church will not hear this truth. Heaven has stopped listening." And as I sealed the manuscript, the candle flickered once almost kindly before burning steady again. Outside, the mountain winds began to whisper a new prayer, one that did not belong to God. Episode 13, The Fire of Faith. I once believed faith could save anything. Now I know faith is just another kind of fuel. The night after Father Angelo burned, the monastery fell silent again. No wind. No prayers. Only the steady hum of the eternal flame pulsing like a heartbeat that wasn't mine. I tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw faces inside the fire: Paolo, the abbot, the monks, even the girl. All of them whispering a single word: remember. So I returned to the library. To the Gospel of Wax. The pages were still warm to the touch. The ink shimmered when I tilted it toward the candlelight. My name, Matteo, was written over and over between the lines, as if the book had been waiting for me to keep writing. And then I saw it, an entry dated more than a century ago. Matteo di Rossi, initiate of the flame. My pulse quickened. That was my family name. My ancestors' handwriting. The entry continued. We sealed the angel beneath San Vettore to contain his radiance. But one among us must always carry his spark. The blood remembers. The flame chooses its vessel. I froze. My hands trembled so badly I nearly dropped the book. It wasn't random that I'd been sent here. I hadn't been chosen by the church. I had been called. When I went to the chapel, the candle was waiting for me, its flame now golden again, beautiful, almost gentle. It seemed to breathe in rhythm with my own chest.
"You've known all along," it whispered. The voice wasn't in the air this time.
It was inside my head. Familiar. Almost comforting. "No," I said aloud. "You're a lie. You killed them all."
"They gave themselves," the voice replied.
"Faith is surrender. Fire is just another form of belief." I backed away. "You want me to worship you." The flame shimmered, its light forming the faint outline of wings. "No," it said softly.
"I want you to finish what your blood began."
My rosary grew hot in my hand.
Smoke curled from the beads. One by one, they melted, fusing into my skin.
I screamed.
Memories that weren't mine flooded my mind, images of my ancestor kneeling before the same candle, pressing his hands into its flame and smiling as it burned him alive. The wax had flowed from his body into the altar, sealing the angel below. The voice grew louder.
He believed. You will too.
I ran to the basin of holy water, splashing it onto the candle.
The water hissed, turning to steam. The flame didn't die, it laughed. The laughter echoed through the entire monastery.
When the steam cleared, I saw it, the girl standing behind the candle, her eyes no longer gold but my own color.
You can't escape yourself, she whispered. The fire has always been inside you.
I stumbled backward, clutching my chest. My heartbeat synced with the flicker of the flame.
Every pulse made the candle grow brighter. I fell to my knees. Tears stung my eyes. What are you turning me into?
She smiled sadly. The same thing you turned him into, a prisoner of belief. Then the flame reached out. Not a vision this time, but a living strand of light wrapping around my arm.
It didn't burn. It entered. And in that moment, I understood. The candle hadn't been consuming souls. It had been collecting them. Every sin, every prayer, every drop of faith, it was all stored within that endless fire,
waiting for one thing, to be whole again.
And I was the final piece. Outside, thunder rolled.
The sky cracked open like a wound, spilling light instead of rain. The eternal candle burned higher than ever before, and for the first time, I didn't look away.
Because I knew the truth now. I wasn't meant to destroy it. I was meant to become it. Episode 14, The Covenant.
The night the truth revealed itself, the monastery ceased pretending to be holy. Its bells no longer tolled for prayer, they tolled for debt. I found the covenant sealed within the abbot's chamber, behind a wall of icons so old their paint had fused to the stone. The parchment was brittle, edges darkened by centuries of candle soot. The seal, a perfect circle of wax, glowed faintly as if still warm. It bore the insignia of the Vatican sanctum, dated 1674. The words inside were written not in Latin, but in something older, angular, divine, indecipherable to the uninitiated. Yet as I read, the letters shifted, rearranging themselves until they formed sentences my mind could understand. When heaven cast down the seraph who refused silence, his light scorched the earth. To preserve the world from his brilliance, we bound him beneath holy wax. In return for his eternal burning, he demanded one promise: he shall never burn alone.
My heart pounded.
Beneath the signature of the Vatican envoy, there were 13 names, the abbots of San Vittore through the centuries.
And next to the final line, space for one more. Matteo di Rossi.
The ink was already there, faint but forming, as though the covenant itself had anticipated my hand.
I dropped the parchment, trembling.
The candle in the chapel flared the instant it hit the ground. Every flame in the monastery burned higher, the air thickening with that unbearable hum.
Then I heard him. Not the whisper I'd known before. not the gentle lure of faith.
This was a voice that filled every shadow, every heartbeat. A voice that spoke like thunder through the walls of my skull.
They feared my silence, it said. So they caged it in song. You, Matteo, you are the final verse.
The doors burst open. The girl stepped through the storm of light, her eyes glowing with the same brilliance as the candle's heart.
But this time, she didn't look like a child.
Her face was ageless, beautiful, terrible, divine.
You are him, I whispered. She smiled. I am what remains when belief burns too long.
The ground split beneath the altar.
Wax poured upward like molten glass, sculpting shapes that were neither angel nor human. 13 figures, the former abbots, their mouths open in eternal prayer.
Their eyes turned toward me, pleading. They kept me here, the voice said through her lips, because the church needed a miracle that would never end. Every century, they renewed the covenant.
Every century, one of you knelt and fed me faith. Then why me? I choked out. Because your faith is the last, the voice thundered.
And when it burns, so will the world that forgot to believe.
The covenant on the floor burst into flame, words vanishing as the wax seal liquefied into blood.
I stumbled backward, but the circle of fire closed around me. The girl extended her hand. Her palm blazed like a sun.
Sign it, Matteo. Finish what your fathers began.
I looked at the candle, its flame towering now, twisting into the shape of wings. I felt its pull inside me, the same warmth that once felt holy now suffocatingly alive.
I won't, I said.
Her smile vanished. The walls trembled.
You already have. I glanced down. My hand was no longer flesh.
It was wax, dripping slowly onto the covenant's ashes.
Each drop hissed as it touched the floor, sealing my name in light. The candle flared blindingly bright.
For a moment, I saw everything: heaven, hell, the void between, and then nothing but fire.
The voice softened. Every light needs a keeper. And then silence. When I awoke, the chapel was cold again.
The candle burned quietly, smaller now.
The girl was gone. The abbots were gone. The covenant lay blackened at my feet.
Only one thing had changed.
The flame's reflection was no longer of a candle, but of me. Episode 15, The Rebirth of Fire. At dawn, the mountain's blood light.
Not sunlight, something older, something burning through the clouds like a wound that refused to heal. The monastery trembled beneath it.
The bells rang on their own, their sound warped and hollow, like echoes underwater.
I could feel the stones breathing again, pulsing in rhythm with my heart, or perhaps it was the other way around. I was no longer sure where I ended and the flame began. The candle still burned at the center of the chapel, small and deceptively calm. The once golden wax had turned translucent, like flesh lit from within. When I stepped closer, I saw something inside it, a shape forming, almost human.
Almost me.
The voice came softly this time, like a lover's whisper pressed against the soul.
You've carried my light well, Matteo. Now let me carry yours. I fell to my knees. I didn't want this. I wanted to save them.
And you did, the voice said. Faith was always the purest kind of fuel.
You've kept it burning longer than any before you. The walls cracked. Dust fell from the vaulted ceiling. Every candle in the monastery ignited at once, thousands of flames awakening in unison. The light filled the chapel like a flood, bright enough to erase shadows, bright enough to blind. Through the blinding glare, I saw figures emerging: Paolo, Father Giulio, Sister Elena, even the little girl. Their faces glowed like molten gold, their eyes hollow yet peaceful.
They were not alive, but neither were they gone.
They stood silently around the eternal candle, their mouths moving in prayer. "Why show me this?" I shouted over the roar. "Because they are your inheritance," the voice said. "Every soul that burned before you lives within the flame. You are their continuation, the next keeper of the covenant." "I won't," I said. "I refuse." "Then the world will burn without purpose," it replied. The ground split open beneath the altar, revealing the chamber below, the sea of wax and flesh I had seen before. But now it churned, alive, surging upward like a tide of light and bone. The faces within it screamed silently, reaching toward me. I stumbled backward, but the floor beneath me had begun to melt. My footprints filled instantly with glowing liquid, sealing me to the earth. "Accept it," the voice urged. "The fire has always been yours. You were born from its breath." And then I remembered my family's crest, the stories my mother told me of ancestors who served the church, always at San Vettor. The bloodline of keepers. The faith that never died. The realization hit me like flame to oil. I was not the end of this curse. I was its continuation. The candle flared, reaching toward me, and this time I did not run. I let it take me. Fire enveloped me, not burning, but becoming. My skin turned to light, my breath to smoke, my heart to pure heat. I felt everything, every prayer whispered in darkness, every confession, every ounce of faith that humanity had ever poured into the void. And through it all, I heard his final words. "Light cannot die, Matteo. It only changes hands." When the fire finally dimmed, the monastery was gone. Only a circle of ash remained where the chapel had stood. And in its center, untouched by wind or time, burned a single, perfect candle. Its flame was steady. White. Silent. Eternal. Days later, pilgrims would climb the mountain again. They would find the candle standing alone, still burning, still unmelting, still waiting. They would kneel before it, whisper prayers, and feel peace. They would not see the faint outline of a man's face within the flame. They would not hear the whisper that followed them home. Every faith must feed its fire. And so, the miracle lived on. Not a blessing. Not a curse. Simply the candle that never melted.
Epilogue: The Pilgrimage of Ash. 300 years have passed since the fire on Mount San Vettor. The monastery is gone, nothing but stone bones and whispers buried beneath moss and time. The church no longer speaks of it. The name San Vettor has been erased from maps, its history sealed beneath Vatican vaults labeled only non relicendum, never to be spoken of. And yet, some stories refuse to die. I first heard it in a mountain village, from an old shepherd with eyes like burnt coal. He said that on clear nights, when the moon hides behind clouds, a light still burns where the chapel once stood. Not lightning. Not campfire. A candle. He told me pilgrims still come, men and women who have lost everything, who crave forgiveness when none will come. They follow the sound of distant bells that no longer exist, and they always find it, a single candle standing in the ruins, untouched by wind or time. Its flame is white. Perfect. Calm. Those who kneel before it claim they hear a voice, soft, patient, sorrowful. A man's voice. It doesn't ask for worship. It asks for memory. Do you still believe in what burns? It whispers. Some say the candle's reflection reveals your truest sin. Others say it shows your deepest prayer. But everyone who returns from that mountain carries the same mark. A faint circle burned into the palm of the right hand. I came to see it myself. The climb was endless. Snow fell like ash. The silence was suffocating, but the closer I drew, the warmer the air became. And then I saw it. The candle stood in the center of what had once been the chapel, its flame bright enough to cast shadows across the ruins. I felt drawn to it, as if it already knew my name. I knelt. The heat was unbearable. My reflection shimmered in the flame, and for a heartbeat, it changed. A man's face appeared, solemn, kind, and unbearably sad. Matteo. His eyes met mine through the glass of fire. He spoke one sentence, no louder than breath. Faith never ends. It only changes hands. The wind rose suddenly, and when I blinked, the face was gone. The candle burned quietly once more, its light steady, eternal. I turned to leave, but as I descended the mountain, my right hand ached. When I looked down, I saw it, the faint mark of a perfect circle burned into my skin. The shepherds say no one ever sees the flame twice. That it finds a new keeper each century. And when I sleep now, I dream of light. Not warmth, not peace, just light that never dies, whispering in a voice that sounds like my own. Every faith must feed its fire. And in the distance, through the dark, I see a single candle. Burning, waiting. Never melting.